Middlesbrough are facing the prospect of losing not one but two key players in the coming days, with interest building in two of their most promising stars. It's been a really interesting few days for Middlesbrough on the transfer front. Three new additions have come into the club over the last week or so, with Sonjay Hansen, Adelson Balanda, and of course Sverre Nipan arriving on a season-long loan deal from Manchester City. Now, those signings combined with a positive start to the season on the Championship front has meant that fans are feeling quite optimistic at the moment. There's only a week and a half left of the summer transfer window. The squad's starting to take shape. There's a couple of new signings that are still needed, but things are really kind of starting to look up, or at least that was the case until reports emerged on Wednesday night about interest in two of Middlesbrough's most promising star players. Now, according to reports from the Daily Mail, interest was building in Finn Azaz from a club in Middlesbrough's own division in Southampton. Now, Southampton are interested in signing him. They're looking for attacking reinforcements. Of course, there's a lot of uncertainty around one of their most talented young stars in Tyler Dibbling, who's attracting a lot of interest from the Premier League. Southampton are very, very keen to bring in a number 10, an attacking midfielder, to bolster their promotion hopes. Now, it's been reported by the Daily Mail, but also by the Northern Echo and Dominic Shaw, that Southampton have actually made an offer for Finn Azaz. They've made a bid which has been rejected by Middlesbrough themselves. Rob Edwards confirmed that in his press conference ahead of this weekend's match against Norwich City, that an offer was made and that the club have turned it down. Now, that means that Finn Azaz will be in contention for the match with Norwich City, but it does provide a big question mark with regards to his future at the Riverside and what it could potentially mean for him. Now, according to those reports, Middlesbrough value Finn Azaz at around about £12 million. So any club would need to get close to that £12 million in order for Middlesbrough to do a deal. Of course, Middlesbrough signed him back in January 2024. It was when they signed him from Aston Villa. He arrived for a fee of just £2.5 million. So, of course, selling him for £12 million would be a really good profit. It would be a £10 million profit, which would be a similar sort of level to what we've seen Middlesbrough do with previous sales. Obviously, most recently, we've sold Ralph Vandenberg for a significant profit as well. So it's one that Middlesbrough will be considering. Of course, for Finn Azaz, it's a move which could be of interest for him. The report in the Daily Mail suggested that he was open to the move, and it's quite hard to I guess not to see why he might be interested in making that move to Southampton. Of course, they've just come down from the Premier League. It wasn't a great campaign for them last term, but they've now been taken over with Will Still in charge. But Southampton are very much going to be in contention for automatic promotion this season. And you've got to say that Southampton are one of the clubs that offer a genuine opportunity for players to get into the Premier League. They're undoubtedly one of the favourites to go up this term. And so while Finn Azaz might not be attracting interest from a current Premier League club, the next best thing would be going to a club like Southampton, who are very much odds on to go up this season. Now, last season was a really promising one for Finn Azaz. His numbers were really, really impressive. It was 11 goals and 12 assists, I believe it was, over the course of the campaign, off the top of my head, that he racked up over the course of last season, and that was a really, really impressive tally. It was among the best in the Championship, I think, in terms of I guess contributions at the final end of the pitch. It was only Joel Perreault at Leeds United who actually got more over the full campaign. So it was a really impressive campaign for a club who, admittedly, we must remember, only finished 10th in the Championship as well. So to record those kind of numbers was very, very impressive. He is a player who would be hoping to recreate those numbers this season, and you've got to see that that's why Southampton would be interested in bringing him to the club. He's a player who's very much on the upward curve. He has Premier League pedigree. He's someone who came through with he started with West Brom and then went to Aston Villa, and he was very highly rated, and he's someone who has aspirations of getting back to the Premier League. And I think when you put Middlesbrough and Southampton side by side, objectively, you've got to say that Southampton do have the better opportunity to get into the Premier League this season. If you were choosing between the two clubs, with a view to looking to get into the top flight, you think that Southampton would be the better option there. So It's going to be a really interesting one with that. It'll be interesting to see what Southampton do next. Of course, they've had an offer rejected for him. Middlesbrough do have an asking price, which is £12 million. So it'll be interesting to see whether Southampton get anywhere nearer to that, or whether they can actually meet that asking price to get that deal done. It could depend on whether they do sell Tyler Dibbling. That's a fee that could be worth an extortionate amount of money, probably upwards to 30-40 million pounds, something like that. So that would obviously give Southampton the money to replace him with Finn Azaz for just £12 million, with money to spare as well. So it's going to be a really, really interesting one to keep an eye on. Middlesbrough, of course, they'll want to keep hold of Finn Azaz, given just how influential he was last season. But it could be the case that they are forced to sell him if he does want to move on, and if Southampton meet that valuation. But it does also interlink with the situation regarding Hayden Hackney. Now, cast your minds back, 3 or 4 weeks now. Hayden Hackney was a transfer target for Ipswich Town. They came in with an offer worth £20 million. Middlesbrough accepted that. Hayden Hackney went down to Portman Road for talks over a potential deal to the club, and he turned them down. Ultimately, he didn't want to go to another club in the Championship. But that same report in the Daily Mail is suggesting that Ipswich are actually considering coming back in for Hayden Hackney. Whether there's been a bit of a change behind the scenes in terms of Middlesbrough's stance or in terms of Hayden Hackney's stance, I'm not too sure. Of course, there hasn't been anything in the way of Premier League interest for him. So similar to what we're saying with Finn Azaz, it might be the case that Ipswich could offer him the best possible opportunity that's available for him to play Premier League football. So I think those two storylines, I guess, do kind of interweave, because it has been reported that Middlesbrough wouldn't want to sell both of them during this summer transfer window. It does very much feel like it will be one or the other. Losing both Finn Azaz and Hayden Hackney would be an absolute disaster with just a week and a half left of the other summer transfer window. So for Middlesbrough, there would be a need to keep hold of one of them. If it is Finn Azaz that moves on, it does feel like Hayden Hackney would potentially be kept at the club. And I think if I was in charge of this situation, I think Hayden Hackney would be the player that I'd prefer to keep at the club. I think he's probably the more important of the two in terms of how Middlesbrough set up and what he brings to the team, and the fact that he is a hometown lad. He's probably offers more assurances that he would be putting his heart into it in terms of his performances and wanting to do the best that he can. So it's going to be an interesting one for Middlesbrough to manage over the next week or so. Will both players potentially leave? Will neither of them leave? Will Southampton come in with another bid? It's all on the table at the moment. But I think for Middlesbrough, it is maybe a little bit of a sobering moment, I guess, after a week of really, really exciting new arrivals. I think with Sanjay Hansen arriving, that was a really exciting deal. We showed against Millwall exactly what he's capable of, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of that starting against Norwich this weekend. It's very Nipan. He's a player who was the world at his feet, really. Going to Manchester City for £12.5 million. He's a player who is really expected to be the next big thing. So it could be a really exciting season for him at Middlesbrough. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens over the course of this season with those two players. But will Hayden Hackney and Finn Azaz be playing with them? We're not too sure just yet. But if you have enjoyed this video, please do drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about those two players and whether you think Middlesbrough could cope without Finn Azaz this season if Southampton do decide to up their offer. Comment below, and if you have enjoyed this, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe, and I will catch up with you next time.